All right, everybody, welcome to week 10. At the start of this week, I'm going to give an update for our schedule. So the next exam, as you can see here, scheduled on the 8th, was going to cover chapters 9, 10, and 11, comparative advantage, consumer choice, and technology and cost. But we've decided as a group teaching this course that we want to really focus in on comparative advantage and technology and cost. And so we're going to be adjusting this final exam to only include questions from Chapter 9 and Chapter 11. And Chapter 10 will instead be extra credit. Some folks have been asking about extra credit. So it's the DSM, the Dynamic Study Module, is still available. It's just now marked as an extra credit assignment. So if you're doing really well, you can choose to skip it. But I think it's still a really interesting chapter. And definitely, if you would like a little bit of extra points, worth checking out. So let's take a look at that real quick. So comparative advantage and gains from international trade is chapter 9. And as you might remember, it's going to tie very closely to chapter 2, right, where we talk about comparative advantage and trade. So if you're uncertain on this, you don't remember this from our first exam, you might want to go back and review that. And what chapter 9 does differently from chapter 2 is we talk about not only in the context of individuals, but specifically we're going to expand it to the context of countries. We're going to talk about government policies and what happens when governments interfere or place restrictions on international trade in some way. And sometimes those restrictions are good and make sense, and sometimes they don't. So for instance, there's a whole section here in this chapter on tariffs. And if you're following the election at all, you know that one of former President Trump's proposals is to impose higher tariffs on all goods imported into the United States. So you might find this particular chapter really interesting in light of the current electoral race. So that's chapter 9, talking about comparative advantage in international trade. The other chapter that is going to be still on the exam is chapter 11 on technology, production, and costs. So this is all about how changing technologies change the way that businesses can produce, change how we work and function in our society. So it uses ChatGPT and the rise of generative AI as an example. It talks about a whole bunch of different things. One of the most important concepts in this section is short run and long run in economics, and what's the difference between them, right? And this is really important because, in the short run, a company can't depending on your state and, your type of business and all that sort of things, right? Your company just can't fire you without adequate cause, etc. But if in the long run, if they do layoffs throughout the whole entire company, then they can change how much work they employ and how many people they employ. So the difference between short run and long run for businesses and producers is really important. All right, so those are the two chapters that will still be on the next exam. As for chapter 10, it's still a very interesting chapter. This is talking about consumer choice, how we as consumers make the choices that we do. So kind of deriving the demand curve based on consumer choices, how trends influence the way consumers make choices. Behavioral economics is a really interesting subfield of economics. So hopefully you'll still check out this chapter and do the Dynamic Study Module for it to receive that extra credit. All right. As always, feel free to email me. I have office hours Wednesday and Thursday this week from 11 to 1. Hop on in, feel free to ask questions. Best of luck.